I never should have read my grandmother's letter. The official story was that she died peacefully in her sleep at the old family home, a quaint little cottage nestled deep in the Adirondack woods that had been in our family for generations. The truth, as I would come to learn, is that some silences are a prison, and my grandmother didn't die, she escaped. Her will was simple. The house was mine, with one single, handwritten condition tucked into the legal documents. My dearest Leah, it read in her spidery cursive, the house is yours if you want it, but you must never, under any circumstance, try to find the source of the humming. It was such a bizarre, nonsensical request that I almost laughed. I assumed it was the rambling of an old woman whose mind had faded at the end. I was wrong. The first week at the cabin was idyllic. It was late autumn, and the New York woods were a fiery tapestry of red and gold. The air was crisp, smelling of pine needles and damp earth. The cabin itself was cozy, filled with the comforting weight of family history crocheted blankets, worn hardwood floors, and the faint, sweet smell of my grandmother's rose perfume that still clung to the curtains. But there were oddities, too, things I brushed off as charming quirks. Every mirror in the house was covered with a thin black cloth. All the clocks were permanently stopped at 3:17 a.m., and the door to the root cellar in the kitchen was not only locked, but had a heavy iron bar laid across it, secured by two hefty bolts. It felt excessive, like someone was fortifying against something trying to get out, not in. After a few days of settling in, the silence began to press in on me. It wasn't a peaceful quiet. It was a thick, heavy absence of sound that made my ears ring. It was in that profound silence that I first heard it, a low, resonant hum, so deep it was more a vibration in my bones than a sound in my ears. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, thrumming up through the floorboards. I remembered the letter, the source of the humming. A cold knot tightened in my stomach. My rational mind offered excuses: the plumbing, the wind, a distant generator. But this felt alive, intentional. It would start at random intervals, sometimes for just a few minutes, sometimes for hours, a constant, droning bass note that set my teeth on edge and made it impossible to think. I started sleeping with the lights on. The hum seemed louder at night. It was during the second week that the whispers started. Not words, not at first. Just sibilant breaths at the very edge of my hearing, like someone was standing just behind me, exhaling softly. ID spun around, heart-hammering, to find an empty room. The house, once a sanctuary, had become a cage. The covered mirrors began to feel less like a strange tradition and more like a dire warning. What was I not supposed to see? I started having dreams, vivid, suffocating nightmares of being trapped in a dark, cramped space, my mouth filled with the taste of soil, that relentless hum vibrating through the earth around me. I'd wake up gasping, the hum still throbbing in the air. I was exhausted, my nerves frayed to ribbons. The fear was a constant, cold companion. I know a lot of you watching have your own fears. Maybe it's spiders, or heights, or being alone. But what's the one sound, the one specific noise that just makes your skin crawl? For me, it used to be nails on a chalkboard. Not anymore. It all came to a head one Tuesday. I couldn't take it anymore. The hum had been constant for 18 hours, a psychic assault that left me nauseous and trembling. In a fit of desperate rage, I decided to find it. I was going to prove it was just a faulty pipe or a trapped animal and reclaim my sanity. I started in the basement, a damp, stone-lined space that held only forgotten furniture and cobwebs. The hum was strong there, but it wasn't the source. I moved through the house, my ear pressed to the walls like a safecracker. The sound led me, inevitably, back to the kitchen, to the barred root cellar door. The humming was loudest here. It pulsed through the iron bar. My hands were shaking as I fumbled with the heavy bolts. They were stiff, rusted from decades of disuse, but they gave way with a shriek of protesting metal. The lock was a different matter, a thick, old-fashioned padlock. I found a rusty hatchet in the woodshed, and, with a few frantic, fear-driven blows, shattered it. The door swung inward on groaning hinges, revealing a steep, rickety staircase descending into absolute blackness. A wave of cold, damp air, smelling of loam and something else, something metallic and sour, washed over me. The humming was deafening now, a physical pressure in my skull. I grabbed the flashlight and descended, my heart trying to beat its way out of my chest. The root cellar was smaller than I expected, a cramped, circular, earth-walled room. And it was empty. Completely, utterly empty. No shelves, no jars, no forgotten vegetables, just hard-packed earth in that overwhelming, all-consuming hum. I shone the light around, confused and strangely disappointed. Had I imagined it all? Was I truly losing my mind? Then the beam caught something in the center of the dirt floor. A single, fresh human footprint facing the wall, as if someone was standing right there, in the empty room, with their back to me. My blood ran cold. I stumbled back up the stairs, my breath coming in ragged sobs, barred the door again, and spent the night huddled on the couch, clutching the hatchet, waiting for dawn. The next morning the house was silent. The humming was gone. A wave of profound, giddy relief washed over me. It was over. The silence was back, but this time it was peaceful. I felt like I had passed some kind of test. I even uncovered one of the smaller mirrors in the hallway, needing to see my own face to prove I was still real. For 3 blissful days, the silence held. I started to relax. I unpacked my books, made a proper meal, and began to think of the house as my home again. The terror of the root cellar began to feel like a bad dream. That was my mistake. The false safety. Last night, I woke up. It was 3:17 a.m. The stopped clocks flashed in my mind. The room was pitch black, and the silence was back, but it was different. It was the listening kind of silence. I held my breath, straining to hear, and then I heard it. Not the hum, a new sound. A soft, slow, scraping sound. Stump, stump. It was coming from the kitchen. I knew with a certainty that froze the very marrow in my bones what it was. It was the sound of the iron bar being slid back, one slow, deliberate inch at a time. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. I just lay there, paralyzed, as the scraping stopped, followed by the distinct, rusty clang of the bar hitting the floor. Then the sound of the root cellar door swinging open. Slow, heavy footsteps began to climb the stairs. They weren't frantic. They were patient. They reached the top and started down the hallway toward my bedroom. I finally found the strength to move, scrambling to lock my bedroom door, my hands slippery with sweat. The footsteps stopped right outside. There was no doorknob jiggling, no pounding, just waiting. I pressed my ear against the wood, hearing nothing but the wild drumming of my own heart. And then, a whisper, so close it could have been right on the other side of the door, a dry, rustling sound, like dead leaves skittering across stone. It spoke a single sentence, a question that has been echoing in my head ever since. Why did you let me out? I didn't answer. I couldn't. I just slid down to the floor, pulling my knees to my chest, and waited for the sun. The door never opened. When dawn finally broke, gray and weak, the hallway was empty. The root cellar door was closed. The iron bar was back in its brackets, as if it had never been moved. Everything was normal. But it's not. The silence is back, but it's not empty anymore. It's a waiting silence. And sometimes, just for a moment, I think I can hear it breathing. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you felt that chill, that sense of dread, then you know why I had to share it. If you want to hear more tales from the edge of sanity, please make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what lurks in the next shadow. And I have to ask, after hearing what happened to me, what's the one family rule you would never, ever break? Let me know in the comments below.